It was the morning after Christmas, 5:52 a.m., when her mother called 911 saying her little girl had been kidnapped out of her bed and a ransom note left in the house.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're breaking down the moments from the Netflix true crime docuseries Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey, that will send chills down your spine. Out of respect for those involved, this video is unranked. Due to the extremely dark and sensitive nature of the Ramsey case, viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Was there an intruder, or was the family involved?
I did not kill my daughter, JonBenét.
The day of, in the Ramseys' own words.
Do you mind taking us through the day, just the timeline?
Well, it's hard, but we were planning to leave early that morning. That was the day after Christmas. We'd had a big Christmas at home. And
we'll avoid getting into the hard-to-stomach details of exactly what happened to 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey. There is plenty of information out there about that, including at the beginning of director Joe Berlinger's Cold Case mini docuseries. For the uninitiated, a brief recap. Ramsey, born in 1990 to parents John and Patsy, was found lifeless by her father on December 26, 1996.
15th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay?
The subsequent media frenzy saw the two named as key suspects in JonBenét's death. The opening scene of Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey finds John Ramsey recounting the day they discovered JonBenét's body with input from archival footage of the late Patsy Ramsey. It's still gut-wrenching to watch John discuss that day, as he's had to do many times before.
if you have kids and you've been in a shopping mall and your child disappears, even for a moment, you get this punch in the stomach that's just severe. Where's my child? Just panic for a moment, then you find her and it's over, but it only lasts for a second, but this horrible in your gut trauma, I guess.
The ransom note.
We had a spiral staircase to the first floor, and I just started downstairs to get coffee on or whatever. As I, moved toward the end of the stair, there were these pieces of paper lying on one of the runs of the stair.
Patsy, narrating via interviews filmed prior to her 2006 death from ovarian cancer, recounts what's almost definitely the most baffling part of a famously baffling case. Many people, armchair internet sleuths and forensic experts alike, have struggled to find a reasonable explanation as to who wrote the ransom note found at the Ramsey family's house.
We have your daughter, and it clicked, your daughter. And I just bounded back up the steps and threw her door open, and she was not in her bed.
Even more have difficulty grasping the why of it all. Several questions are raised by the letter. For example, why did the note specify a sum of $118,000 in exchange for JonBenét's safe return? What foreign faction did the author claim to represent? And why was what appeared to be an early draft of the note found on Patsy Ramsey's personal notepad?
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully.
We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction.
We respect your business, but not the country that it serves.
At this time, we have your daughter in our possession.
She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter.
The autopsy report.
The handle of that was taken off and secured at the end of this garrote.
There was some complexity as to how the garrote was put together. This knot was tied by somebody who understood how a garrote is made.
Veteran Denver journalist Carol McKinley, who covered the JonBenét Ramsey case as it happened and is interviewed in Cold Case, makes a compelling argument to those interested in reading more about it. That would be, quote, anybody interested in the Ramsey case needs to read the cause of death in the autopsy report. She calls the document, quote, critical.
We believe JonBenét was alive when this was being done because she had hair tangled in this knot.
Although this segment of the series gets into more detail than we need to get into, one thing that's important to point out, the report revealed that the crime scene contained a broken paintbrush that came from Patsy Ramsey's home studio. The seemingly unanswerable questions persist here, this time focusing on exactly what methods were used to tragically end JonBenét's life.
Well, when they got her to the autopsy table and opened up, her brain, they realized she'd been hit over the head.
The beauty pageants.
For TV and tabloids and everybody to tell the story, you need pictures.
And the Ramsey case became immediate fodder because JonBenét Ramsey was in child beauty pageants.
As we pointed out, the sordid saga of JonBenét Ramsey's death was seized upon by the contemporary news media. This was, as you can probably guess, the unfathomably painful, unthinkably grotesque nature of the case, and particularly the fact that JonBenét had met her end in such a way. As pointed out by investigative reporter Paula Woodward, the abundance of photos and videos of JonBenét turned the situation into, as she puts it, quote, immediate fodder for the media. The judgment passed down by the court of public opinion was swift and harsh. JonBenét's participation in the pageants was deemed too inappropriate and too adult for her age, and that her parents had forced her into participating.
There was a very professional, almost adult, and frankly somewhat sexual look to them.
Why won't John and Patsy cooperate with the police?
I saw it in John's eyes. I knew he was the killer. It's crazy. And, but that's how I got started.
I knew what happened.
Another aspect that complicated the public's opinion about the Ramseys, their decision to immediately bite their tongues and lawyer up, instead of cooperating with the ongoing Boulder Police Department investigation into who had taken JonBenét's life. And maybe it's hard to blame them. After all, the police were harshly criticized for their perceived mishandling of the initial crime scene investigation, which led to the contamination of possible mountains of forensic evidence that might have helped to solve the case.
The father, John Ramsey, has hired a well-known criminal lawyer, and a Denver newspaper reports he will not talk to police.
They hired lawyers immediately. And that just seemed weird.
However, John claims that an ominous phone call placed to him by one of his employees was what set him down this path. In the call, the unnamed employee warned John that the police considered him and Patsy to be their leading suspects.
So I answered the phone, and it was one of our employees. He said, I was told by someone inside the system to get this message to you. They believe you killed your daughter, and you need to get the best defense attorney you can get your hands on.
A lack of footprints.
There was a narrative that started by the Boulder Police Department that it was done by somebody inside of the home because there was a lack of footwear impressions in the snow.
No footprints in the snow, therefore no intruder. Well, there was a reason why there was no footprints in the snow. There was no snow.
One misconception that the documentary attempts to untangle is the lack of footprints leading up to the basement window. One major theory to explain JonBenét's death is that a purported, quote, foreign intruder might have broken into the Ramsey home through a smashed window, based on debris later examined at the scene of the crime.
There's a slight dusting that you can see on the front end of the house. But if you look at the back side of the home, there's no snow.
The police fed a lot of information that they wanted out there to a guy named Charlie Brennan.
However, skeptics point out that since it was wintertime, how could the perpetrator's footprints not have been identified? Journalist Michael Tracy fires back by saying that hardly any snow had fallen the night before, which would not have been conducive to making prints. This led to wild, seemingly baseless speculation, which Cold Case links to subsequent false narratives in the media.
I was given information by a source I trusted that police took note of the fact when they got there that they didn't see footprints in the snow, and they considered that to be significant. Is that Charlie Brennan saying that that's significant? No.
Did Patsy do it? The other major theory as to what happened to JonBenét Ramsey?
At what point in time did you say, I think Patsy Ramsey killed her daughter?
There was not a defining moment in which the bell rang, and I noted the date and time. Early in 1997, it became more and more apparent to me.
The Cold Case docuseries notably explores the possibility that Patsy Ramsey was responsible for her daughter's death. While that may be impossible to wrap your head around, Detective Steve Thomas, who the documentary paints as a staunch believer in the Ramseys' guilt, proposes that Patsy, in a fit of rage caused by JonBenét's bedwetting issues, lost control of herself.
In my hypothesis, an approaching 40th birthday, the busy holiday season, an exhausting Christmas day, and an argument with JonBenét had left Patsy frazzled. Patsy would not be the first mother to lose control in such a situation. One of the doctors we consulted cited toileting issues as a textbook example of causing a parental rage.
Thomas further suggested that Patsy, having accidentally taken her daughter's life, panicked and staged a kidnapping based on her imagination. However, this is directly disputed by retired Detective Bob Whitson, who notes that the circumstances hypothesized by Thomas contradict several real-life elements of the crime scene.
So if you believe that Patsy Ramsey did this, she would have had to do all these things while JonBenét was alive. This wasn't staging. She was alive when this was being done.
Enter Lou Smit.
Lou is one of those guys. He was a Sherlock Holmes of his time. And, you know, when he looked at this, I mean, obviously, one of the first things you're going to do is look over the body.
Smit, a highly respected local detective, went on to become a major champion of the Ramsey family's innocence, long before it was deemed publicly acceptable to do so. A number of Smit's colleagues, interviewed for the film, attest to Smit's strong moral character, as well as his uncanny knack for dissecting well-worn crime scenes to find new clues and information.
Now, what I'd like to show you is what I think is one of the most important clues left behind by the killer. Stun gun.
Smit's efforts and research determined that a stun gun had been used to incapacitate JonBenét, something that hadn't been clocked by earlier investigators. Even still, the detective was able to determine that JonBenét had been pulled directly from her bed, and that her bed sheets were perfectly dry. The latter is implied to be a significant blow to the Ramsey family's detractors.
Boulder PD thought the stun gun marks to her face and back were created from laying on some train tracks. If anything, they've been doing nothing but dismissing the stun gun.
John and Patsy are revealed to have been indicted by a grand jury.
As I understand it, the grand jurors didn't know who might have done what, but felt that there was something that happened there.
The grand jury found John and Patsy Ramsey had intent to hinder, delay, and prevent their daughter's killer from being prosecuted.
What they believed was that the parents knew what had happened, or should have known what had happened, or should have got her help.
A 1998 grand jury, convened to consider bringing the Ramseys up on charges, eventually returned a true bill recommending to indict them. However, they wouldn't be charged with JonBenét's death directly. Instead, they would stand accused of having been severely negligent and failing to remove their child from harm's way, which resulted in her death.
What the grand jury was telling us was they found there was probable cause for these people to be indicted. But there's a long, long step between probable cause, which is the lowest standard in the criminal justice system, and proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that is the highest.
Alex Hunter, the district attorney for Boulder County at the time, ultimately declined to press charges against John and Patsy. While members of the Boulder law enforcement community have openly voiced their disagreement with this decision, Hunter justified his actions by citing a lack of sufficient credible evidence.
It would have been easy to bring charges, but to have brought charges when you didn't feel you could make your case would have been a horrible thing to do. I feel at peace.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. The story of Daxus.
He started to email me on a regular basis, where he slowly started to say that he had killed JonBenét.
Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenét Ramsey, ends on a frustrating, heartbreaking note, devoid of any closure for both everyone involved and audiences at home. The aforementioned Michael Tracy reveals an ongoing virtual correspondence he shared with a man who only referred to himself as Daxus. Tracy claims that this Daxus was aware of the journalist's role in reporting on the JonBenét Ramsey case and wanted to confess that he was the true killer.
This is Mike Tracy. Oh, hey, Michael.
We taped, I believe, 11 hours of conversation, all of which was being listened in on by various intelligence agencies. And that was a very, very dark experience.
So it's great to finally talk to you. Yes, I must admit I was a bit surprised when you sent the phone number.
After years of false alarms, this seemed like a real lead for Tracy and the Ramseys. Daxus was revealed to be John Mark Karr, an American expatriate living in Thailand. However, while Karr clearly displayed signs of attraction to children, he was ultimately ruled out as a suspect after failing DNA tests.
We found out that the DNA didn't match a couple of days later.
Insiders said he knew certain details about the brutal crime only the killer could know, but officials at the Denver Crime Lab say DNA proves he was not at the scene that dreadful December night.
And John Mark Karr was released.
What do you think of the JonBenét Ramsey case? Let us know in the comments below.
Takes a while, takes a long while for the pain to go away. But then the memory of JonBenét is joyful. And
that's where you're at now.
That's where I'm at now.